Okay, so Jill, I'm going to start off by reciting a release, and then you can respond at the end. This will be
Okay.
real quick. The opening establishes your release to use your likeness, image in the video and audio recording. You hereby give your consent to B-Story Pictures or any subsequent company that houses the East Hammond, the Village Grapevine project. Further, you acknowledge that you give us for gratis, irrevocable, worldwide rights in perpetuity, regardless of whether these materials are used for advertising, promotion, education, publicity, or any other purpose on behalf of the company. The acquired digital file will remain the property of B-Story Pictures, its subsidiaries, or agents. Finally, you waive all rights, claims, and damages. The exploitation of the recording or oral history is acquired for the purposes of education, history, and to uplift the city of East Hammond and its residents. You attest that you fully understand the aforementioned. Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I wanted to just start out by just asking you to give me your name and can you also say your maiden name too? So your name and your age and what street you grew up on.
Okay. So my name is Jill Smith Williams, and I am 55 years old, and I started out on Field Street, but I grew up on Ames Street.
Grew up on Ames. Okay.
Ames.
Right on the corner there, right? Okay.
Yeah, right on the corner.
Okay. So tell me who was in your household? Like, was it your, just say your mom, dad, and their
My
names,
mom.
and you have brothers and sisters. Okay.
Okay. So I grew up with my mother and my father, Joseph and Carnice Smith, and my brothers, Stephen and Joel Andre.
Okay. Joel Andre. Okay.
Yeah.
And so tell me, so on Ames Street, so you grew up on Ames. So if you can think back, who were some of your neighbors on Ames Street? To your left, your right, and
okay. So on Ames Street, I grew up with the Nances that were across the street from me. It would be to my left. The Thompsons, also to the left. The Carpenters, the Talaferros, the Earls to the left. On the right, it would be the Comers, the Bucks, the Sims, the Lewises, also to my left, and that's all I can think of right now.
okay.
Oh,
Okay.
the Edwards. There were the
Edwards.
Yeah. Yeah, across the street. Yeah, the Edwards, yeah. Across the street were the Alexanders, the Thompsons, again, the Nances, the Earls, the Talaferros, and the Lewises. Yeah.
And the Lewises. Okay. So let's first talk about your dad. Where was he born in Hammond, or did he migrate to Hammond from, say, the South or somewhere? How did he get to Hammond?
My dad, I believe, was born, I want to say in Mississippi, and then I think as a baby they migrated from, I forget what part of Mississippi, to Hammond.
Okay. Well, now when you say they, Carnice was born in Mississippi too?
No, my mother was born in Stanton, Tennessee. When I say they, I'm talking about my father's family. Yeah.
Okay.
So my dad, So my dad migrated from Mississippi to Hammond, and then my mom was born in Stanton, Tennessee, and I guess her family migrated to Hammond as well.
Okay. And so they met in Hammond?
They met in Hammond.
Carnice?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when he got there, did he come there for say a job, or what was the purpose of him coming to Hammond?
I just think that I mean, it happened when he was a child, so maybe his parents, my grandparents, just kind of wanted to have a better life, I'm assuming, and so they just kind of migrated to Hammond, and I just always remember them living on Conkey Street. So I don't really know the reason why my grandfather and my grandmother moved, but I just always remember them being on Conkey.
Okay, so they brought their kids, your dad, whatever, to
Right.
Conkey Street, and then eventually he met Carnice. And so did he? Where did he meet her? Was it in what school or just around the around the neighborhood?
I just kind of think because they lived very close nearby, they knew of each other, and I just kind of think that that's just how it happened, just by them living in the community. I don't really know the love story of my family. I mean, I don't know that. I don't know the details, but I just kind of know that, because of them living in Hammond, they just kind of got together. I don't know where, but they did.
Okay. Well, that's a question I'll ask Carnice herself. So
Yeah.
I'm supposed to talk to her.
Yeah, you'll probably have to ask her. Yeah.
Yeah. So what did your dad do? I mean, for a living? What was his profession?
My father worked at American Made, and gosh, I'm trying to remember I don't really remember. He was, I don't want to say he was like a crane operator, because I know that it was a oil type job. I know that they made like corn oil because it was called American Maize, corn refinery. So I'm not really sure what his position was. I don't know. I know that he had like an accident on his job regarding some kind of conveyor belt kind of situation, but I don't know exactly. He was some type of operator. That's probably the best way that I could put it. And my mom will probably have more knowledge about what his position was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some type of machine operator.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. Some type of operator with machinery.
Okay. And was American Made in close by? What city was that in?
American Maize was actually in a area called, I think it's called Roby, Indiana. So I believe that was the northern part of Hammond. Yeah, kind of,
Oh,
sort of.
okay. Oh, so it was actually in Hammond.
Well, it was called Roby, Indiana. So I think
Roby,
it was
Indiana.
like,
Okay.
yeah, Roby, Indiana. So, I don't think, no, I was wrong about that. It wasn't in Hammond, it was in Roby. Not too far from
Roby.
Hammond, but Roby, R-O-B-Y, yeah. Roby.
Okay, okay. And so now, and at the same time that he was working, was he a 9 to 5, or was he like midnights or?
No, my dad worked, from what I recall over the years, he worked various shifts. So he did the 3 to 11, he did the 6 to 5, he did the 4 to 12. So, all those various shifts he worked.
Oh, okay, okay. And so while he was doing that, what was your mom doing?
My mom had various jobs as well. My mom worked in the school system. She worked in the school system. At one point, she worked at Pullman Standard. And then her later years, like when I was in college, she worked at the Hammond Police Department as a
Okay.
yeah, but it was gosh, I can't even think of what her title was at the time. She could probably give you more information on that.
Okay, okay. So
Yeah.
now were the three of you guys, the two boys and you, were you like latchkey kids? You were, kind of on your own after a certain point, or how did that work? Or did she get off in time to, I guess, drop you off at daycare or whatever? So how was home life with you guys and them working? How was that?
Okay. So it was from over the years I can remember. We were never left alone. There was always someone that was taking care of us. So sometimes we would walk home with kids who were on the block, and, their parents kept us until either my mom got home or my dad got home, or sometimes we spent time with my grandmother and my grandfather. So it just really depended, I guess, on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
what it was. So we were always with someone. We were never latchkey. We were never home without a parent being there. Either, my dad always had the funny hours where he would either work the 4 to 12 or he would work the 6 to 5 shift or 4, whatever it was, or the midnight shift. So there was always someone home.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And so the environment around you with the two boys and you and then your parents too, the environment, you were saying that other neighbors and this, that, and the other kept you and this, that, and the other, and that actually was pervasive because your mother actually kept me for a while, so it lights the circle. And so
right.
So tell me just the environment of Hammond in terms of your friends, family, and how was it as a place to grow up?
Well, as I said to you earlier, Hammond to me was just, as I can remember, just a very friendly place. I mean, it kind of reminded me of, as I said once before, it kind of reminded me of the fictitious sitcom of Mayberry because it was just very friendly. I mean, I can remember people just kind of sitting out on their porches, or they were just outside having friendly conversation, or they were, outside watering their lawn or planting flowers. I mean, it was just a very neighborly and a very just closely united neighborhood from what I remembered. I mean, it was like it was never any strangers that I can remember. I mean, everyone kind of looked out for each other, and it was just, I don't want to say it was magical where it just seems cliche, but just growing up, I just remember it just being a very cohesive community. It's just the best way I could put it, just very close-knit, where people actually back then really looked out for one another and, just kind of like that.
I get you. So now so what school did you go to from that street, from Ames Street? I mean, where, did you go to Maywood, Wallace, or where'd you go?
Okay, so I think because I lived on Field Street, I remember going to Maywood Elementary, and then I guess when we moved to Ames Street, as far as middle school, I went to Spohn Middle School, and then there was another junior high school that was really built in the heart of Hammond that was a little bit closer than Spohn, where you could actually kind of sort of walk to, went to Eggers Middle, and then from there, Hammond High.
I get you. And so, when you went to Spohn, you actually walked a little distance all the way to Spohn, or did someone take you?
Yeah, Spohn was where you actually needed transportation. So if Mama and Daddy couldn't take me, then it would be other people who was actually on Ames Street who could actually, we would carpool, because there would be times when, like if my dad was available, like say if he was working midnight, then he would take a bunch of us, to Spohn School. And then some kind of way, the parents came together cohesively and said, okay, well, if Joe drops them off in the morning, then, we'll pick them up. So they worked that out, because that's how we did it. And then when they built Eggers, which was actually in walking distance, then, of course, we walked to Eggers, because Eggers was just a little bit further away from Hammond High, and Hammond High was within walking distance.
Okay. Well, you lucked out, because I went to Spohn, too, and I had to walk.
So
I had to walk, and I remember in the winter, it was like, oh my God! But we did get a chance to walk past that I don't know if it was a Wonder Bread company. It was
the
bakery,
Wonder Bread. You could smell the bread. You could smell it.
Oh,
my
you could
God!
smell the bread.
Ooh-wee.
that helped me get to school. I just follow the smell. Follow the smell.
Follow the smell of the Wonder Bread. Yes, it did, Bobby. You're absolutely right. That smell, yes. Now, see how that associates with phone school? Yes, I remember those mornings. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Smell of the Wonder Bread.
That's right. Now, sometimes we had to wait for the trains and all that kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
it was all good. It
Oh,
was all
tell me
good.
wow.
So who were your running buddies? I mean, who did you just hang out with when it from elementary and then it transitioned to high school? Who were your peeps?
Okay. Well, it's kind of crazy because I kind of hung out with a lot of people. I mean, I hung out with those who I went to school with, so I could say the Nances, because all of us were kind of like around the same ages. And then I had cousins that, I hung out with, like, our Aunt Dolores' kids, like Keith Smith and I were in the same age group. So, there were times when, he would come over, after school and kick it with me, or I'd go over to Aunt Dolores' and kick it with him. So I just hung out not only with friends, but with family as well. So I just kind of hung out with kind of whoever. I didn't really have anybody that was really my homies because I just kind of hung out with everyone, including friends and family. So, gosh.
Okay. And then so it went from there to high school where the same group of people.
Same group of people because we all kind of hung around. We all went from, it was like a little cluster of people. We all went to Mount Zion together. So, we had the same people that's in Mount Zion that goes to, Maywood, Eggers, Phone, and Hammond High. And so, we just all kind of kept that cliquish kind of thing. And so, yeah, we all just kind of did it all the way through high school. So I didn't really have anybody that I hung out, because I hung out with guys as well as girls, so I didn't really, I didn't discriminate.
Were you? You didn't discriminate?
I didn't discriminate.
So, were you influenced by any people? Like, did you look up to any people and say, you know what, I like the pattern in my life, or whatever they did could or could not have influenced you? Is there anybody?
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, I'm just going to be honest with you. My influences honestly were family. Like honestly, my role models were my mom and my dad. And the reason why I say that is because, number one, they were my first teachers before I went to school. Number two, they epitomized Black love to me. My father had this gaze in his eye when he looked at my mom, and she had the same for him. And so I looked at how their marriage was, and I said, that's what I want when I get married. I want that. I want a man to look at me the way my dad looks at his wife. I want, and vice versa. I'm sure Stephen felt the same way about, how Mama was, because she was a great role model, and, she taught me a lot. She taught me how to sew. She taught me how to cook. So I saw her as my example. I saw my dad as my example as well, and what I wanted in a man. So they, to me, epitomized what Black love truly was, and I just always believed that their marriage was a match made in heaven, because I would come home from college, and I come home on a Friday night because somebody said, hey, Jill, I'm going to heaven, and they lived in Gary, and I was like, okay, so I'm packing up all my stuff to go home, and I get home, and ain't nobody home. I'm asking Stephen, like, where's Mom and Daddy? And he's like, well, they went out on a date. They at the movies. Daddy took Mama out to dinner. I mean, they still had that fire in their marriage all 32 years up until his death. So my first role model is really were my parents. And then if I had to look up to anyone else, I would have to say my grandparents, which was Jewel and Virgie Alexander, because to me, they had a great marriage. And not only that, my grandparents showed me what it meant to be involved with the community. My grandparents were always the ones who were politically involved or civically involved with the community. They were members of the Eastern Star. My grandmother was. My grandfather was a Mason. They were members of the Hammond chapter of the NAACP, so always active to better our community. I remember my grandmother telling me a story of how they used to have protests back in the day when blacks were treated unfairly, and how they did these peaceful protests through the streets of Hammond. And I remember her telling me, I guess it must have been one of those times when I stayed with them or something, because I remember her telling me how, I was a part of that with them. I did some of those peaceful walks through Hammond with them. So, yeah, they were always trying to right the wrong of the community by being active and, trying to better our community. So my grandparents, to me, were just my role models in that fact of trying to do the right thing for our community.
Okay. And that actually is a great transition, because it leads me to the next question of movers and shakers. And Jewel's name comes up every single time, Jewel Alexander, as one of Hammond's movers and shakers and people to get things done and to lobby for the citizens and to was more of an activist and stuff like that.
Yeah, he was.
So
Yeah, both of them.
do you remember some of those things that, and you already told me he did, the silent or peaceful protest by actually marching and this, that, and the other. Do you remember some of the other things that Jewel did?
I remember him trying to get, there was like a surge of gang violence at one time in Hammond. And I remember these gang members wanted to send a clear message to my grandfather, because I guess he and some other people who were activists in the community were just trying to keep that negative type element out of the community, or sending them a message or whatever. And so I remember one of the gang members or something sent a message to my grandfather. They shot in his car, I just remember seeing bullet holes in his car to send him a message to let him know that whatever he was trying to do to get them out, that they were sending him a message like, we're not going anywhere. And they sent him a message that, by, shooting up his car. So I remember him just trying to, rid our community of that type of element. And so that's something that's kind of stayed. Well, of course.
What was his response to the shooting?
Well, I was a young girl, so I can only surmise and just imagine that, when that happened, it had to concern him. I'm sure that it should have frightened him at some point. I'm sure it did, but he didn't discuss that with me, so I don't really know what his true feelings were, but I just know that it had to shake him up, to see bullets in your car, for them sending you a message. You're trying to keep Hammond, clear of the element, and they're like, we here, and if you continue to try to get us out, this could happen to you. And then you see the gunshots in his little red Volkswagen. So I can only imagine. But my grandfather was a fighter, and I just remember him always being really stern. So I'm sure that whatever he was trying to do, even though they sent his message, he was still trying to send them a message that whatever you do, we, the citizens of Hammond, we still gonna try to get you out. So I don't know what his emotions were, because I didn't see that. I just remember what I saw with his car, and I can only imagine that, it probably did shake him up, but he was still going to try to right the wrongs and try to, get rid of the gang violence that was going on during that time.
Do you remember what year that was? Around what year? Or do you remember?
No, I don't remember that. I don't. I just remember his red Volkswagen, but I don't remember the year. So I don't know if it was before the 70s was it before the 70s or during the 70s? I don't remember.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I don't
and
remember.
this off the record, I needed to know, do you have a bio of Jewel Alexander by any chance? Or does somebody in your family have a bio of him?
Someone might have it. You may want to ask my mom, and if my mom doesn't have it, it may be my Aunt Yvonne. She may have something.
Okay.
Yeah. So ask my mom, and if she doesn't, she probably could direct you to my Aunt Yvonne. She might have something.
Okay. All right. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I actually needed that. Okay. So
Yeah.
can you think of anyone else besides Jewel who you thought was a mover and shaker in Hammond, someone who got stuff done? More a community activist kind of person at the time?
Right. Um,
Anyone
I
who just
remember.
fought for the people.
Right, yeah, because it wasn't only my grandparents. I mean, it was a lot of people. I remember, for whatever reason, Mr. John Parrish comes to mind. Reverend
Hmm.
Parrish, for some reason, comes to mind. Who else was active during that time? Um, you know what? To be honest, I would want to say, being that there were, I would want to say that it was probably more organizations that probably got things done as well. I would assume that probably like the NAACP were probably very active in some of the things that were going on in Hammond.
Hmm.
But
You mentioned as far as organizations, you mentioned Eastern Star. What did Eastern Star do as an organization, and who was involved in that?
Well, I remember that being like a women's organization, and I remember my grandmother being a member of that, and I'm just assuming that they did uh, community service. What type of service? I have no idea. But I just remember my grandmother being an Eastern Star, and that's all that I remember. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's something that I should probably, look up and read about myself. But I just remember her being
Okay.
a member of that, and I remember my grandfather being a Mason. I just remember them being very active in various organizations in Hammond.
Hmm. Hmm. And you're right. It seems like there were a lot of groups or organizations that
Yeah.
popped up that
Mhm.
people got affiliated with to,
Right.
because there's more power in numbers. So,
Exactly.
uh, it's how they
Exactly.
got stuff
Like,
done.
right, and that's why I'm saying, when my grandmother would tell me about those protests when they would walk through the street, I mean, it had to be some people that came together and said, look, we're not going to take this anymore. They're not letting black people sit at the lunch counters at Woolworth's downtown Hammond. So we're going to take a stand, and, we're going to boycott. So it had to be someone who was behind that to make Hammond come together as a community to do those peaceful protests that they did back then. But who they were, I have
Mm.
no idea. Yeah, who they
Mm,
were.
okay. Were you around when they boycotted Woolworth? When they didn't let black people sit at the counters and this, that, and the other?
Well, I don't. You know what? I don't remember. I don't remember. I mean, I just remember hearing the story, but I don't
Hmm.
remember. So I don't know if I was like a toddler's age or what, because I don't know what year that was. If let's say if it was in 1965, then I was 5 years old. Then maybe
Right.
because I remember my grandmother saying that I was with them on one of those occasions that they did it. So, like, say if it happened in 1965 and it was one of those times that they took me with them, then I could say, oh, well, it was in 1965. But, she didn't say the year, so I'm not sure.
Right. Right. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And so when you were growing up, and I know, Hammond was a close-knit community, and, most kind of people knew everyone. If you said the
Right.
Alexanders, everybody knew that, the Williams, the Nances, the
Right.
Thompsons, the
Right.
Martas, the this, that, and the other.
Right.
Most
Right.
people
Right.
knew
Right.
kind of,
Yeah.
so outside of that, a community, or maybe at Hammond High or whatever, did you witness or experience any racism? Anything that made you, raise an
Yeah.
eyebrow to say, wait a minute, this is different. This is not right. This is different. Any
Right.
experiences like that?
Okay. From what I could think of right now, I don't remember anything that happened at Hammond High that I can recall right now. I can recall a situation with racism that I spoke with you once before that involved my grandfather when I was a kid. But
Okay,
I
tell me
don't
about
recall.
that.
Yeah. So it happened because I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. I was always with my grandparents, and my grandparents lived across the street from Maywood Park. And this particular night, my grandfather and I, before, we settled in, because we had a dog at the time, and we wanted to walk the dog. So before settling in, we walked around Maywood Park, which was on Highland Street, and my grandparents lived across the street on Highland. So we walked the dog, and we're just walking, minding our own business, and we came to the intersection of Highland and Calumet Avenue, and that was where the Hammond Police Department was housed. That was where they were. So we're walking around the park, and we come to that intersection. And as we're walking back to my grandfather's house, there are two white policemen that are standing outside. And so we're walking past them, and then all of a sudden, one of the police officers makes a comment to my grandfather, but at the time I was too young to understand. So he says to my grandfather, he said, it was to the point like, get on home, boy, something like that. And at that time, that didn't make sense to me, because I'm like, well, he can't be talking to my grandfather because my grandfather isn't a boy, and then surely can't be talking to me because I'm a girl. So at that time, in a child's mind, it didn't make sense to me. But when somebody calls a grown man boy, that's insulting, it's degrading, and it's just blatant racism on every level. And that's what stood out to me when someone made a comment about my grandfather being a boy, and being bold enough to say it in a uniform with his partner right there.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And what was your grandfather's reaction, if you remember? What did he do?
Well, let me just say this. My grandfather took the high road. My grandfather
Mm-hmm.
never said anything. I mean, he probably on the inside, his blood probably was boiling, because, that's an insult. But he took the high road, and he didn't even make a comment. We just kept walking.
Mm-hmm.
We just kept walking. We continued to walk the dog. But I can only imagine that he was probably angry. I'm sure he was angry. He said
Oh, yes.
absolutely nothing. But he kept his composure. That's what I remembered about him. He kept his composure. We walked home, but, he probably had some cuss words when he got home.
No, I'm sure. And in order to avoid conflict, that's what most people had to do.
Absolutely.
Especially he had his grandbaby with him, so
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. And
so you were kind
then,
of. I'm sorry. Say it again.
No, I was going to say probably back then, with it being two police officers like that out in uniform, he just probably, for his own safety, knew not to say anything,
Right. No, I get it. All right. So that's probably the only experience. And there was nothing with you personally in in say high school? And I'm sure, was it a mixed, the time you went to high school, what years did you go to high school?
I graduated 79, so I had to go in at 75. So 75.
Okay, 75.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so did, was it a pretty much mixed,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, at the time,
From what
pretty
I
much
can
mixed?
remember
Okay.
about, yeah, from what I can remember about Hammond High and even Spohn and Eggers, from what I can remember, it was pretty diversified. You had a mixture of every kind. And from what I can remember, from my perspective, I didn't experience anything that I can recall. Like that situation that I told you about my grandfather, I can recall that as if it happened yesterday. So if someone had called me the N-word or someone made a comment to me that was racist, I would have remembered that, you know. So from what I can say,
Right.
even from Eggers or Spohn or even Hammond High, I do not recall anyone saying anything to me per se or making any blatant statements the way it was made to my grandfather.
Okay, well that's good. So you had a pretty peaceful rearing and existence in Hammond,
Right.
which was good. Which is good.
Right, right.
And so, did you go to Indiana IU? You went to IU, right? Or
I went
did you?
to Indiana State. I went to Indiana State in Charles.
Oh, okay, Indiana State. So, how was your orientation there? Do you feel that you were prepared appropriately from Hammond High to college, and how was that?
You know, I think that me making preparation to go to Indiana State, I don't know if the counselors at Hammond High were even knew, or no, let me word it this way. I wasn't even sure what I wanted to do once I went to college. I knew that I wanted to go to college, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to major in. So as far as my counselors at Hammond High, I think what they did was they just kind of prepared me for college to take all of the general courses, learning Spanish and all that stuff, so that when I did my SATs, I would, you know, be able to go to college. But I don't remember. To be honest with you, I was confused because I wasn't even sure what I wanted to do. So I was basically just taking general classes my freshman year because I hadn't even declared a major. I wasn't even sure what it was that I actually wanted to major in. But all I could say is with my counselors at Hammond High, they just pretty much prepared me for college with, you know, general courses. But I wasn't led. It wasn't anyone specific saying, well, you know, you should probably go into psychology, or you should probably, no, I wasn't steered into a particular direction. So because I didn't know, I really didn't know what it was that I wanted to do. Yeah.
And so, what did you end up majoring in, and what was that transition? How did you find out what you needed and what you wanted to do?
So what I did was my freshman year, I took general courses. And then I decided that I wanted to major in sociology. So I started taking classes that was geared towards that major.
Okay. And that's what you actually majored in?
That's what I majored in. I didn't get a degree in it, but that's what I majored in.
Okay. And so, and at one point, I know you got married you went from Smith to Williams. So did you get married in Hammond, or did you get married somewhere else?
Yeah. What happened was my father was dying of cancer. And so he always said that before he died, he wanted to walk me down the aisle. But his cancer had progressed in such a way that there was no way that they would be able to fly out here. So everything had to be moved there. so I got married in Hammond. And unfortunately, because my father was on his deathbed, he couldn't even walk me down the aisle. So Stephen and Andre, on his behalf, walked me down the aisle.
Oh, okay. Did you get married
Yeah.
at Mount Zion?
Mount Zion. I did.
Oh, okay.
I sure did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good. So
Yeah.
let me actually go back a little bit and ask, what were some of the fun things that you did in Hammond? How did you spend your time in Hammond as a community? You know, having fun. What are some of the things that you did from
Well,
elementary to high school? Anything?
okay. Well, I just remember that in Hammond, a long time ago, they had a recreation center that was on the corner of Conkey, and it was called Brooks House. So growing up, I remember kids like all over the community loved going to Brooks House because there were so many activities for us. They had like a skating rink, you know, on the top floor, so you could skate there. And then on the lower level, they had a library, so you could go there to read. They had classes that you could take. I remember taking home economics classes. They had cooking classes, just a lot of fun, creative classes there. So I remember just going there, you know, skating and just, you know, kind of socializing there with my friends at Brooks House. And then you know, going to Mount Zion was a great thing as well, you know, because, you know, they would have activities. They would take us on, you know, various trips in the summer and things of that sort. I remember going to Riverview over in Chicago. I remember my mom and dad taking us to Chicago, where we saw a lot of the black classic flicks and things like that. Going to Chicago, catching the South Shore train, and going to the various museums. So, yeah, just kind of doing some things like that, spending time with family, doing slumber parties, going to house parties in Hammond, going to the Civic Center whenever the Civic Center would have various events. I remember my parents taking us to you know, the circus when I was a kid, my brothers and I going to the Hammond Civic Center for various events. So yeah, I remember those fun things. And then of course, you know, when you're in high school and you're in middle school, you know, they have the various school activities that, you know, you go to and things like that. So yeah, and then I can even remember there were times when they would bring the carnival to Hammond, and you know, we would participate in going to the carnival for however many days, 3 to 5 days that, you know, they would have. So yeah, yeah.
Where would they have that at? Where would they
you
present
know,
the carnival?
So the carnival would be on Columbia. You know where that McDonald's is at the corner of Columbia and 165th?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, before it was all of those stores and shops and all of that, or whatever, some kind of way they would just have that whole parking lot, and it would be, you know, just they would set up there.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So just a good, clean, fun scenario.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
what I tell you, Bobby, Hammond really reminded me back in the day of Mayberry. It really did. You know, where you had to call. You didn't have the luxury today. I have sometimes my daughter's friends feel so close to me that they feel that they could call me Jill. So some of them call me Jill. I'm like, dang, I'm old enough to be your mom. I mean, but back in the day, we had to put handles on people's mothers and fathers. So say, for instance, I could walk up to any of my, like I call Aunt Lavera, and Aunt Robbie, and Iris, and Angela. I could not walk up to any of those women and call them by their first names. I'll be smacked. So I had to call them Aunt Robbie, Aunt Lavera, Aunt Iris, Aunt Dolores. You know, we had that respect. And so, like I said, you don't have that. Now, some of my daughter's friends will call me mom, or Miss Williams or something like that. But some of them were just bold enough to call me Jill. I was like, wow. So I'm just saying the respect back in the day was just, it was just, I'm glad that I learned that. Because even today, I meet someone who's older than me. I don't call them by their first name. I'll say, Miss So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so. So, yeah.
Right, right. And that's I guess one has to just be orientated to that and get
Right.
that from the mom and dad early on,
Right. Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just transition to that. Like now, it's actually totally different, and
It
you would
is.
never yell at your parents, call them
Right.
names or anything like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Where
Exactly.
um, so, and that's kind of interesting that transition, that giving actually the giving people the respect that you were talking about.
Right.
That it's kind of
Absolutely.
an inherent, untold thing. It's
It
all
is.
kind of like you don't have to say it because that's what you kind of everybody taught their kids that same thing in the
Right.
house simultaneously. So when you went out
Right.
in the street, everybody
Right.
had the same common denominator.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. And it also goes back to even discipline, like you and I were talking once before. Like if I did wrong, your mom could like get me, and then after she tell my mom that she got me, then my mom gets me. You know what I'm saying? So back in the day, people could do that. People could discipline other people's children, and it wouldn't be anything said. But you can't do that today. You can lose
Oh
your
yeah.
life over doing that. Because it's a different
That's
era. It's just it's a different world right now.
exactly. And on record, your mother must have given me a ton of spankings. So I have
Wow.
to say, oh, I just remember a ton. But I will say that I never got a spanking that I didn't deserve. So I can't say that, and it probably made me a better person. So I know I was
Wow.
always getting into something.
Wow.
So
That's
and
funny.
to this day, it doesn't matter. I still go by and visit her to this day. If I go
Wow.
back to Hammond, I stop by there just to, hey, what's up, kind of thing.
Right. Right.
So
Well,
no
that's
animosity. Go ahead.
yeah. Well, Bobby, that's really strange because the same person you're talking about, my mother, is the same one when she wanted to get me or my brothers used to say, go outside and get me a switch. Now, who does that? Who does that? Like, yeah, she would say, go outside. When she's getting ready to beat my butt, go outside and get me a switch. So I'm like, wow. So I'm not surprised that she did that to you because I remember the one that I used to get, and then she used to, and if I brought in a switch that was small and it was one of them ones that's not going to put welts on you that way she used to put welts on me, that she would go behind me, get a switch that was bigger than life that could just have marks on me for the rest of my life. But who says that? Go outside and get a switch for me to beat your butt.
That's right. Go find the weapon that
Go
I'm going to use
find,
on
yeah,
you.
yeah. And it's funny, Bobby, because both of my parents' discipline strategies was totally different. Like my mom, she would use anything. She used a belt. She used an extension cord. She'll use a broom. My dad's strategy, my dad was the type where he would talk to you, and then after he talked to you, didn't I tell you not to? Yeah, Dad, you did. I could probably only remember on one hand how many times my father hit me, and then when he did spank me, he felt so guilty that he would come to me the next day and he'd buy me something. I'd see a bracelet or he'd bring me home a necklace because he felt so bad. But my mother, when she did it, I didn't get nothing from her, but, I did what I did, and you take it. If you don't like it, so be it. So, yeah, their discipline styles, I tell you, were totally different.
Totally different. Well, you was a little baby, so he wanted
Yeah.
to, felt that guilt.
Yeah, that
um,
guilt.
oh, for sure. So switch reels real quick. give me your impressions of Conkey Street, because that was the major thoroughfare, and there was all the activity happened on Conkey Street, and Brooks House was off, Conkey
Hmm.
Street and so on. So give me your impressions of Conkey Street and all the liveliness or not liveliness or whatever happened on Conkey Street. What's your impression?
Well, to me, like you said, Conkey Street to me was just a very popular street in Hammond, but also to me it was like the Black Wall Street. It to me it reminded me of Black solidarity. It reminded me of blacks wanting to recycle black dollars, and so I remember I had a great uncle who had a successful dry cleaner called Hardwell's Dry Cleaners. That was a great uncle of mine who owned that. And then I remember there was a tavern that my mom and dad and probably all the people, probably Aunt Lavere and Aunt Robbie and Aunt Iris and all of them back in the day probably went and got their groove on at Peyton's Place. So I remember that tavern that they had there. I remember hearing the music. Yeah, remember?
That's Janice Payton who owned that place.
Yeah, exactly. I remember that. And so I just remember it being just a really successful row of black businesses. Like on the opposite end, I remember Mr. Jesse Bradley's barbershop, because I remember sometimes my mom would have me to walk Stephen up there to get him a haircut, and I would walk him up there, and it was always being patronized by black men. It was always full. There were boys and men that were, he was just cutting everybody's hair. So I just remember Conkey Street being a very vibrant place and just a very successful business district for black established businesses. And then I also remember on Kenwood Street there was also a black convenience store called S&J's, and that's where the kids loved going to S&J's because that's where we could get candy for a penny. But they sold everything in there, from sodas to dishwashing liquids or, whatever it is that you needed, they had it. So that was a very successful business also, but that was on Kenwood Street, right across from Mount Zion.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember all of those, too. And it's funny that you even reference Black Wall Street, the Greenwood, Oklahoma, or Tulsa, near Tulsa, is the district of Tulsa, Black Wall Street. And there were other Black Wall Streets, as I understand, around the country, too. And ironically, I guess Urban Renewal in Hammond came in and tore down all those buildings and got rid of black commerce, and I think it affected our entrepreneurship, our psyche.
It did. Absolutely.
In terms of just wanting to start businesses and stuff. How do you think it affected people? What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, of course, when this is all that you do. This is how you feed your family. This is how you make a living. And then all of a sudden you have like the white establishment to come in and say, okay, well, we're going to tear your business down and we're going to put housing here. So what do we do now? I mean, I can only imagine all of those businesses that were on Conkey Street. Now they're trying to scramble and figure out, how am I going to feed my family? I can't go to Munster, Indiana trying to start an establishment, and I'm a black man. I can't go outside of my community. And I don't know how long it took for those businesses to become up and running. And now all of a sudden they may have to try to figure out, okay, where do I go from here? So I can only imagine that it had to play a role in, okay, so how do I feed my family now? What do I do? Because I'm going to tell you, after that happened, I don't recall my uncle reestablishing hardware cleaners elsewhere in Hammond. When that left the corner of Conkey, that was the end of that. So I can only imagine that had to on the inside, how hard he worked, how hard all of those people who had all of these established businesses, how that had to affect them emotionally when, you're trying to feed your family and now all of a sudden your business is no more. So I can only imagine how that had to affect them emotionally, because I don't recall ever hearing that they reestablished elsewhere. That was the end of, Peyton's Place or Peyton's Tavern. That was the end of Hardwell Dry Cleaners and all those other established businesses. I don't recall anyone else saying, "Oh, well, they just moved across Highland. They're on Columbia Avenue. They're on Calumet Avenue." When urban renewal came through, that was the end of it. That was the end of an era.
Do you think that was a hidden agenda from the get to get all of those establishments because you said the recycling black dollar because
right.
it was a perfect place to recycle black dollar
right.
when
right.
you can go to the black store, the black tavern, the black this, there was a little dry cleaner, a laundry mat right across from Jesse's. There was, so it just gave us the ability to exactly to recycle all of that. And I think from one of the interviews, I was told that when urban renewal came in, they said that these companies or these businesses would reestablish themselves, or there was an area that they were going to be moved to, and actually that never happened.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like it's another way of it's another Black Wall Street. But of course, this one wasn't bombed and stuff like the one in Tulsa, but it was done through bureaucratic, governmental way of doing business.
Right. So as far as that's concerned, I think that there could have been a hidden agenda, and we know that racism is alive and well, and I think that was a way of them saying, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get rid of all of these businesses, and this is what we're going to do. And like you said, through, some type of corporate way, they were very successful in their agenda. So yes, I think there was a hidden agenda to get rid of, to just another way of keeping the black man down. And in that regard, they succeeded because they never, like you said, they never relocated the businesses that were on Conti before they had urban renewal to come through.
Right. And they never the criteria. Right. And I think even the criteria for a small business association towards black people was a little harsher in terms of getting loans for another wave of businesses.
Exactly. Bobby, I'm sure it was. I'm so glad to hear about now, since all of what's going on in 2016 with this racism and police brutality, that there is an establishment of black banks, and I'm hearing now that there are a lot of celebrities and rappers who are removing all of their monies out of white banks and putting them in black banks, and had we had that back in the day of, even if urban renewal did what they did, if there was like a black bank in Hammond where you're going to get a loan so that you could rebuild, and that would have been beautiful. But like you said, I'm sure even if they wanted to reestablish, the SBA probably would have made it very difficult for them to get funding to reestablish or to get their businesses going again.
Right. And it's funny you should talk about the black banks, because and I actually saw that list. It was about, I don't know, about 50 or 60 or so, maybe 100 black banks around the country, and there was a push for actually people putting their money into black banks. And now there's there's an agenda for not only the people putting monies in the black banks, but then the black banks have to turn right back around and actually support black businesses, black communities. You know, everybody has their role. You know, we just don't want you to put money in the bank and then it's just another big banking scenario is just owned by a black person. So in order for everybody to rise up, it has to be reciprocal. You know, we help you, you help us.
You help us. And that's the reason why I would be inclined to want to move my money to a black bank because, say, for instance, I would probably have a better chance at, you know, like say if I wanted to expand, you know, my business or whatnot, I would probably have a better chance with getting getting funded with a black bank as opposed to getting not funded by Wells Fargo.
Right, right. And then I think since black banks are all over the country, and even if it's not in your community or your neighborhood, through the banking through internet and through banking on the internet and this, that, and the other, it's nothing because, you know, when you pay PayPal or any other sources, it's not like PayPal's up the street, you know. And due to the little Versateller machines and ReadyTeller machines, you know, and all the associations. So even if you were banking with, say, Wells Fargo or B of A or Chase, any of the big ones, there are these brother companies where you can go to a teller machine and get your money out either way. So so the fact that these banks are not in your community, you can still bank there and put your money there and help grow. So money with wire transfers and all of that, you know, it doesn't you know, it's funny because I was doing a project that I was writing a children's book. And in this children's book, I needed these, it's called Journey to Green City. And it's teaching kids about green technology, and it's more of a science book. It talks about photosynthesis and all kinds of solar and thermal energy and all that kind of stuff. So, but I needed these illustrations done. So I went on to a site called freelancer.com, and I got bids from 38 different countries to bid on the artwork. And so just because like a bank is not next to you, you can still, as a matter of fact, the benefit of that is in America, all this artwork would have cost me $10,000. But I ended up with an artist in Ukraine, and they did it for $800. $800. So
get out of here, Bobby. Wow.
Yes. So, and then I needed the translation. So it was translated in Spanish. So the book is in Spanish and English. So the translation is out of Mexico, and I used some people out of there. I had some illustrations done out of India, and then it'll be printed up out of China. So the bottom line is all that was done on the internet. And so my point is, in terms of banking, is that internet is in our life now, and it's not going anywhere.
So absolutely. You're right. You're absolutely right. It's here to stay. It's going to be here when we leave.
It's going to be here when we leave. So you can live there on Field Street and do banking in New York or wherever.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Technology now is just amazing. I wish I'd have been smart enough to come up with it, because then I could just be on a beach somewhere every day.
Oh, you and me both. I'd be right there under that umbrella with you.
I'm telling you.
So let me ask you this. Do you remember any Hammond first, like to say the first cop, and that was Ronnie Rowe. But is there anybody who pops out as one of Hammond's first in terms of black? Do you know what I mean? Like anybody who was like the first nurse, if there's anything.
Okay. Well, I don't know the whole story. I only know a little bit of the story, but Annie Hicks was the first black woman to sue the School Board of Education because it had something to do with them not wanting to teach her or not. Oh gosh, see, I went to a program, and we had a Black History program while I was back there those 2 years taking care of Mama. And so when it was Black History, they were talking about Annie Hicks, which was Reverend Burns' daughter. And they said that she was the first to sue the School Board of Education because it had something to do with them not wanting her to be in class, or they wanted to keep the class segregated or something like that, and she wanted to learn. Well, she was an educator. But I think she was the first Black to teach. I guess she won the suit, and she ended up, I think she was the first Black teacher, but don't quote me on that.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I didn't know she was the first Black to sue.
She was
Yes. So
it was something, Bobby. It was something first about her. Either she was the first to sue the School Board of Education, or she was the first to become the first Black teacher of Hammond. Something like that. She was the first of something. I forget.
Right, and I think it was both. She sued to be the first teacher. So
there
I
you
think
go.
It was both.
Right.
So she killed two birds with one stone. Okay.
She did.
So,
Yeah.
okay. And you're go ahead. Oh, you got another one. Great.
The story about Roland Parrish. You know the story about him, right?
No, tell me.
So I remember hearing a story about Roland Parrish years ago. And this probably needs to be researched too, because it was like hearsay. But I remember hearing a story about Roland Parrish, Reverend John Parrish's oldest son. Him, I guess while he was in high school or whatever, he was working at McDonald's. And so he wanted to become a manager, because I guess he just felt like, yeah, I can manage this. And the story was that they said that he would never be a manager because he was Black. And so from what I heard was that that didn't sit well with him. So he went off to Purdue University, majored in whatever he majored in, and then I guess he talked with Reverend Parrish and his family, and he decided that because they wouldn't allow him to be manager at McDonald's, and I think it was at the one that's at the corner of 164th and or 155th and Columbia, that one that's there.
Right.
He decided to own one because they wouldn't allow him to be a manager. He decided to own. So he now owns like 27 McDonald's all over. Like I think he lives in Houston somewhere, and he owns all these McDonald's just because they told him he would never be a manager because of his color. So he's like the first Black to own from our area to own like 27. He's probably on to probably more McDonald's, but last I heard it was like 27. He owns like 27 McDonald's all over.
That's actually a great story. I'm sure it's true because all of the facts remain the same as far as the ownership of all those. Did he own that one on 165th and Columbia? Did he end up owning that one?
He doesn't own that one. You know what? That's a good question because I don't know. And wouldn't that be funny if he did? Because that's the very one who told him he would never be a manager because he was Black. So wouldn't that be funny? He might, so I don't want to say no. He might own it. He might own it. But I guess he was just so fueled by that he was like, you know what? I'm gonna own a McDonald's because they said I couldn't manage the one that's in Hammond where he was working. So, for all I know, Bobby, he might own it. Because if he owned 27 of those other ones all around in Houston and wherever else, I think I heard he may have a couple out here, but all in Houston or Dallas, wherever he lives, they said it's like 27. But it would be ideal for him to own the one that's at the very one who told him that he would never be a manager. That would be ideal. So he might own that one. I don't know.
Right.
That would
And it would
be
be great to
interesting if
put
he did.
his picture up right there so they'd have to look at him. So
Exactly.
that's just me. That's what I would do.
I'm
But,
telling you, I would do it too. I would have it outside on the arches.
that's true. So let me ask you this. Do you remember any sayings that your grandparents or your mothers used to say that stuck with you? You know how older generation
Yeah.
always has these sayings.
Same. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember any of them?
Hmm.
Not that you have to. I'm just wondering if any of them stuck out, and
In my
then
mind,
you
right?
abide by those, right?
Right.
Can't think of any.
Well, my mom and dad always, wanted us to be respectful, and to just carry ourselves in a certain way. And so I tried to live that way, just to be
So
a
how would they
right
put it?
person.
How would they say it? Sometimes when you're from the South, sometimes you
I
have
know.
these country, like my grandfather used to say, don't get on the horse before it's time. And I was
Right.
like, what are you talking about? There's no
Right,
horses
right,
around here.
right,
And
right.
what he meant by that is don't go out spending money and
Gotcha.
acting
Right,
like you are, like you're rich before you are or whatever.
right, right,
Don't
right,
spend
right,
money you
right,
don't have. So
right, right,
those kind of
right.
things.
Well, I'll say this. Let me just say this. I do remember before my mom had the stroke, because she had the stroke after I came to California. But I do remember when I was packing up, getting ready to come out there on my way, and thank you very much because you were very instrumental, you and Aunt Robbie and Uncle Buddy, with, me getting myself, acclimated out here. So I appreciate you guys so much, and I'm very grateful to you guys. I remember my mom saying before I left, and she said, have a pen and paper with you because you're going to be a success. And I can't tell you if it's going to happen in 5 years. I can't tell you if it's going to happen in 15 years, but you're going to be a success. And I just remember her saying that. So she did say that to me before I actually got on the plane. And she told me always keep a notebook with me and always keep a pen just so that I could document certain things. And I have done that. I have literally done that. I have documented certain things. So the success probably didn't hit me the way I wanted the success to hit me, but she did say those words to me before I came out here. So those words I do recall. Before I got on the plane, she said, I want you to know that you are going to be a success. And I can't tell you if it's going to happen in 5 years. I can't tell you if it's going to happen in 15 years, but you're going to be a success. Well, I've been out here for 30 years. And it hasn't happened to me where I could say, like I got that beach house out in Malibu, and I got a place out in Calabasas. So success hasn't happened to me like that, but maybe I can count certain things successes. Like, I had a couple things happen where I could say, that was cool, but so I do remember her saying those words to me. So yeah, my mom did say that to me. That did stick out to me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But you have the entrepreneurial spirit too, because you have the company on the side. What do you do on the side? Yeah. Talk about what you do.
Okay. So after I came out here, got married, like for 20 years, didn't work. So I had to figure out how, me and my daughter was going to survive, how we were going to make it. And so while I'm working a full-time job for Roughneck Auto Group out here in Pasadena, I said, man, I need some extra income coming in because, it's just me and my baby girl. So I started taking up chocolate. Somebody said, why don't you take it? So I went to this chocolate class out in Glendora. It was free. And I started learning how to not only make chocolates, but making chocolates where they look really professional. So I did that for like 2 years, free class, just traveling out to Glendora every Saturday. And so after doing that, people started to take notice because, you know, I started taking them to work. And then that's how I was making my side hustle. Like, people were like, yeah, Jill, can you hook me up with some strawberries? I was like, yeah, oh, I got a wedding coming up. Or my daughter is getting married, baby showers. And so people started actually coming, business started coming to me like really, really easy. And I was like, wow, this is extra money for me and my daughter. So it was cool. And then I started doing other things, like I was doing things for the company, and so my name started getting around, which was cool. That was cool. And then all of a sudden, Hollywood started to take notice because Niecy Nash at some point was getting married, and she was having this bridal shower at the at this hotel at Hollywood and Vine. I'm trying to think. I think it's called Redberry Hotel or something like that. But anyway, so she wanted me to make her some strawberries for her bridal shower. And she didn't know if I was just a person who was just saying I was going to make them. Because she kept saying, you know, I can use anybody. That's what she told me. She was really straightforward with me. She said, you know, I can use anybody because I really don't know you from a can of paint. She said, I could call Sherry's Berries. That's what she told me. She said, I don't know you from a can of paint. She said, and I could call Sherry's Berries. I could call anybody. She said, but you know what? I see your drive, and I saw what you've done, and I want to use you for my bridal event. So would you like to do it? And I was like, of course, Niecy. Yes, of course. So she gave me her personal cell number. She made sure, please do not give out my number. You know, this is private. I said, I will not. I promise you I won't. You know, I will keep your number somewhere else so that, you know, we don't have to worry about anybody getting your number. So I made her these strawberries, but because she was Niecy Nash, I couldn't just make chocolate dipped strawberries. I had to put a twist on it. So I made her a strawberry centerpiece where I put it up on I got like these cone foams, and I glued the cone to a cake plate. And I just kind of placed the strawberries in a way where she loved it. And so after that, after that, she tweeted me on Twitter, and she tweeted me out to all of her followers. At that time, she had like a lot of followers. She took a picture of it. She talked about how delicious they were. And then after she tweeted me out on Twitter, that kind of blew me up. And then Sherry Shepherd was one of her bridesmaids, and Sherry Shepherd tweeted out a comment about me. And then after Sherry Shepherd tweeted me out, then Cheryl Lee Ralph was one of her bridesmaids, and she tweeted me out. And when they tweeted me out in the Twitter sphere or whatever, then celebrity blogs started writing about me, and then it just kind of went from there. And then I started getting these invitations to do the Emmys and the Oscars and the Grammy, and it just kind of went crazy. It was just so amazing. So when my mom talked about success, that I would be a success, it kind of happened for a hot second. Yeah.
No, but that's. I mean, you know, a little girl from Hammond ended up doing some stuff on the Oscars and the Emmys and stuff. So that's you know, it's funny because even Gerard actually ended up with an Emmy, and you know, Gerard McClendon, and he did. You know, they have local Emmys that the Emmy what do they call it? The Motion Picture Television Arts and Science Academy has local satellite, awards all over the country. Not just a big one, but and so he ended up, based on his talk show in Chicago, he ended up with an Emmy.
Wow! And you know what? I've seen him, Bobby. I have seen him, and I, you know, all those McClendon guys, they're so successful in whatever it is that they do. They're just all successful, all of them. all of them.
Oh, yeah. Well,
But
Teddy
baby,
is a part of this project, Teddy McClendon. So it's me and Teddy doing
wow.
this. So
Wow.
you're
Oh,
right.
my God.
Those McClendon boys. Yes.
But not those McClendon boys. I mean, there's so many success stories that come out of Hammond. I mean, we could talk about you. I mean, I remember you guys, I told you, I remember you guys living on the other end of Conkey Street, and because, you know, my mom and your mom were like the best of friends, and Rosie, and I remember going over to your house. Oh, your mom's house was always the bomb, just so beautiful, just a beautiful, she was a beautiful woman, still is, and so is Roz, and I just remember going over there and seeing that big old Great Dane. I was always afraid of you guys and dogs. but
Yeah.
but I mean, I
used to ride
remember
them
you
too.
guys. But I remember you guys living on Conkey, and then you guys moving out to California, and then I always heard about you. I always heard about your success. Oh, did you hear about Bobby? Bobby was in the magazine. Oh, my God. Oh, did you hear about Bobby? Bobby's on, you know, he's in a movie. Oh, my God. And so I always heard about you, and I always heard about, and this was way before, you know, you could Google stuff. So I was like, how y'all finding this stuff out? I mean, you know, you were in magazines, or you were either in the Los Angeles Times, and somebody sent the, you know, the article back to Hammond, but always heard about you, Bobby, and you being so successful, you know, and then I had a chance to see you, you know, able to see you on, you know, on 5 Heartbeats, and then I remember there was a situation where you invited me to something out that you were doing, and you introduced me to Robert Townsend, and so you are a success from Hammond as well. I mean, you have to put yourself in that same limelight. You are a success story from Hammond. So from Hammond to Hollywood, that goes for you as well.
From Hammond to Hollywood. Well,
that's right,
you know,
Hammond Hollywood.
and Hollywood is a really strange creature. It
Yeah.
can eat you
Yeah,
up
I'm
and
sure.
spit you out.
I'm
Or,
sure, yeah.
you know, you can be happening today and gone tomorrow.
Gone tomorrow, yeah.
To sustain yourself in Hollywood is a chore. And,
right.
But I mean, I love what I do, and I guess they say
I know.
they have a saying: if you love what you do, you don't
What
work
you
a day
do,
in
you
your
never
life.
work a day in your life. You're so right. And that's where I'm trying to get. Like you said, I am entrepreneurial, but you still have to, with me, I still have to keep a regular job in order to still kind of do some of the things that I want to do. But my goal is to be where I can do what I love to do and make a living from it. That is my goal, and I'm going to get to it if it kills me.
Yeah, yes, and it won't, and you will, because you're going to take some of that Hammond Wall Street
Right.
with you and in your spirit, and turn it around
Right.
and you know, use some of that. And
Right.
and I think that there's a lot of energy and spirit that we can get from all the McClendons, the Roland Parishes,
Right.
the Reverend
Oh, yeah.
Burnses, and
Yeah.
the Irv Crosses, and all these
Right.
people who have done
Right.
stuff. And
Right.
certainly a lot of the first, you know, all of those,
Yeah.
you know, Dorothy Daniels and
Yeah.
Fran,
Oh,
you know,
my
all
God.
these people who,
Yeah.
you know, I think we can move things to another level and also inspire the younger generation too, because you know,
Exactly.
it's like you may not be Rosa Parks, but you can be Rosa Parks' mother who made Rosa Parks. So you indirectly are
Absolutely.
responsible for some history. So who knows, your
Absolutely.
daughter may go on
Right.
to do something just magnificent. But
Right.
you can't say her daughter's name without saying your name. And
Right.
actually, even with Jewel has
Yeah.
to say Carnice. Carnice has to say Jill. Jill has
Right.
to say, and you know, so it's all
Right.
one thing
Right.
passes down.
Exactly.
And
Exactly. You're so
so
right.
lastly, I just wanted to ask you, is there anything from Hammond that kind of embodies you, any experience that you've had that you can say, you know what, I am glad I grew up in Hammond because it gave me this, whatever this is, that you can be in California, but the inside of you is from Hammond. So is there anything in Hammond that you got there that carried you all around the country doing what you do? Is there anything?
Well, you know, like from an entrepreneurial perspective, you know, when I look at and I think back to all of the people who had their businesses, and I even think of some people who used to do my hair back in the day, and they did it in their their homes, in the basement,
Mm-hmm.
or in
Right.
their living room. The people who didn't have storefronts, but they did things out of their house. I learned from that. So I have to say that when I look around, and I think about the people who were in the trenches who didn't have a storefront business, but they had home-based businesses, that inspired me. That's the reason why I wanted to come out here. When I went to Indiana State, I met people from all over, from Africa, California, New York, all over, and I said it has to be more to life than this, and I just want to go out and see what I could do, what I could do beyond Hammond. And so I wanted to come out here, see what it was that I could do. What can I do? And I learned from some of the people who did my hair in their basements. I said, gosh, Miss Flossie, she was a hairstylist, but she was a hairstylist at home. And the Miss Lampkin, who lived next door to me, who did my hair in her basement, she was an entrepreneur. Not a whole lot of people. I mean, people knew her, in the community, although she didn't have a storefront. So I got my inspiration from wanting to be my own person from the people who had their businesses that were in their homes, that were home-based. Because I had to start mine out home-based. I couldn't go out and buy no storefront. Everything that I did when I went to cater parties in Hollywood and various charity organizations, I had to start it at home. I didn't have money to go out and have a storefront that says Jill's Chocolates. Everything that I did, I had to do at home. So, yeah, there was various people who I could look around from our community who had a sense of entrepreneurship, and they did it quietly in their homes, and they still made bank.
Okay. And you know what? Ironically, everyone doesn't have to have that brick and mortar
Right.
building to sell their stuff. As a matter of fact, ironically, some of the larger companies now, like at Amazon, like at eBay, they're more people are reaching I shouldn't say companies that are reaching prospective buyers internationally. So you can have a little storefront or your home from your basement or wherever sell product all the way overseas. As I gave you an example of me doing business, in China and in Ukraine and all that straight from here.
Right.
And so
Absolutely.
it definitely can be done, and and I'm glad you even mentioned that, because I think it would be an inspiration to that person who doesn't have the storefront and who comes up with something, and really all you need is that computer. And some people do some of their best business at Starbucks. They go into Starbucks and use that Wi-Fi and sit down, and they're at work.
They're at work, and that's my goal, Bobby. That is my goal, and I'm going to tell you another goal of mine. I am so I love writing, so I definitely want to do some writing, and not only that, real estate. There's something about real estate, and I'm going to tell you, I got hooked on those $1 million real estate that comes on Bravo, because you see all of these realtors that are selling these $1 million properties, and they just get you so inspired. And I don't want to be a realtor per se, but I know that there are some people who have told me that they made money by being a real estate investor, and that's what I want to do. That's one of my goals too. Yeah,
well,
that's a goal of mine.
Being a real estate investor, and I think that's cool. That's cool. I think the biggest thing is once setting goals, it's then rolling up the sleeves and
getting absolutely
and getting it done.
True. Getting it done. You're right. And it is definitely.
And
I have a. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say you're absolutely right, because I have a vision board. I have a vision board, and I have specific things on my vision board, and real estate is on my vision board. So, like I said, I talked to people who said, look, I went down to the county courthouse, and I bid it on a house or a condo, and it was all I had to come up with was like $1,500, and I won the bid. And then I went ahead and whatever work needed to be done in it, I went ahead and got the work done, and then I went ahead and I put it on the market, and then I ended up I paid $1,500 for it, but when I sold it, I was able to sell it for over $100,000, So that's what I want to do. But there's like diamond in the rough. You have to find a specific, property that works for you, where you can afford to have whatever rehab that it needs, and then you put it on the market, and then you make a profit. That's what I want to do. I don't want to get into the realtor type situation where you got to show people homes. I don't want to get into that.
You want to flip. You want to flip property.
That's what I want to do. I want to be a wholesaler, because that's what I was told it's called. I want to get into wholesaling, like you said, flipping. You see a house, you go ahead and you flip it to the next person. You make anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, from the flip, and that's what I want to do. So that's what I want to do. That's on my vision board. And I look at my vision board every single day. So it's on my vision board to do it, and I don't know when I'm going to be able to do it, because you got to have money. You can't do no flipping without money. You got to have some money. So when I'm able to come up with some money where I could actually see a condo or something where I could, go down to the courthouse and bid on it, and, of course, if it needs rehab, and you got to have money for that. But I want to, flipping. That's it. That's what I want to do.
Well, you did it once, so, and you've already been through that experience, so there it is. Do it again. I mean, you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
But listen, I want to actually thank you for even participating in this, because your words are gold to me, and the younger generation, 50 years from now, will hear these words and hopefully know a little bit more about Hammond, the people in Hammond, how Hammond was run, and the camaraderie of all the people and the connectivity of all the people. So Hammond was a place that you don't just live in your house and don't know your neighbors and this, that, and the other. Everybody knew everybody.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's what makes the, you referred to Mayberry, that's Mayberry RFD, that's the Andy Griffith Show. But you referred to that community where Andy Griffith knew everybody. He was the police officer, but you knew Aunt B, you knew Opie, you knew Barney, you know all the people in the neighborhood.
Right, and it was just a friendly, cohesive town,
Exactly. So, but once again, I just want to thank you for participating. And I think that this project is going to be definitely enriched by you and your experience. And I probably would talk to a bunch of people that are your relatives and that you know too, from this process. But once again, I want to thank you.
I want to thank you also for allowing me to participate, because I think that this was a great idea that you guys came up with. And like you said, it's going to help those where, we pass the torch to another generation, and it's just going to help them to become more familiar with the community that they live in now, that we have lived in, and will always be our humble beginning.
Excellent. Okay, so hold on.